Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Okay, so it's not exactly Valentine's Day. I'm a little late by the time this video actually comes out, but I want to do something kind of special to celebrate Valentine's Day, the season of love and relationship, and I thought I would take this opportunity to review one of my favorite romantic comedies ever. When Harry Met Sally. So When Harry Met Sally is a romantic comedy, came out in 1989, was directed by Rob Reiner, and written by Nora Ephron. And if you don't know who Nora Ephron is, you're probably not alone. I assume a lot of people probably don't know her unless you're really into her specific kind of movie, which I am, and I didn't even really know her name until I did a little bit of research. And I found out that Nora Ephron is responsible for all three of my favorite romantic comedies. And for those of you who don't know, there are three romantic comedies that for some reason just click with me. And it's When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, and You've Got Mail. All three of which have Meg Ryan as the lead romantic interest. And so I've just been kind of calling it the Meg Ryan trilogy, even though she's made many, many more rom-coms and chick flicks and just other movies. And because of that, I was never really satisfied on giving that trilogy that name. But then come to find out that Nora Ephron has either written or directed or done both on all three of those movies. So from now on, I'm just going to call it the Nora Ephron trilogy, because those three movies really are top tier in the romantic comedy genre, at least for me. I know everybody has their favorites, but for me, there's something magical about those three movies that are just heads and tails above everything else. I know this video is supposed to be specifically talking about When Harry Met Sally, but I feel like the stuff that I love so much about this movie is also what I love about all these other movies. And if you want even more context on my thoughts on You've Got Mail specifically, I have a whole video dedicated to that and the fact that that's actually a remake of Shop Around the Corner. So go ahead and check out that video after this one. But what I love about these romantic comedies is the fact that the people in them talk like real people. They're not just these stock cardboard cutout Netflix rom-com type people. These are people who might not be the prettiest, the most attractive people to look at, but they have such charm and charisma. And for the sake of this video, I'm talking about Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal. Now, I'm sure a lot of people find Meg Ryan attractive. She's not really my type, but you know, I can kind of see it, but she's not like drop dead gorgeous or anything either. She's kind of quirky and awkward, and I think a lot of that is what endears her to so many people, or at least until plastic surgery and Botox completely messed up her face, but that's beside the point. And then you have Billy Crystal over here, and you know, no disrespect to Billy Crystal, but he's not leading man, handsome, you know, Hugh Grant style charisma and attractiveness. He's, you know, the shorter, kind of balding, average looking dude. He's just really funny, and that comedy and wit really makes these two a perfect match. And that just adds to the fact that the writing in here by Nora Ephron is very down to earth, grounded. Now, it's not entirely realistic because there are some just really good one-liners and really good lines that were clearly written by someone who knows how to write good dialogue. I guess it's kind of in that Tarantino Pulp Fiction zone where you're like, oh yeah, these people kind of sound like real people, but it's clearly not actual improv or just regular off-the-cuff dialogue. Somebody clearly had to write this and really think about these lines and how they connect, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant screenplay 101 lesson right here in this script. But the other thing that really sets these movies apart from a lot of other rom-coms out there is that they're not afraid to reference other movies or to borrow whole concepts, even like in the case of You've Got Mail, from another movie, almost making it a remake. But in the case of When Harry Met Sally, a big thing in it is Casablanca. And Casablanca is brought up in conversation a couple times. You see Harry and Sally watching Casablanca on their couches, or I think one of them's in bed, and they're kind of long distance watching it together on the phone. And even the music used throughout this movie are songs from Casablanca. Now, they're not like original recordings, but they're covers of songs like As Time Goes By or It Had to Be You. Songs that if you've seen the movie, you're like, oh yeah, Casablanca. And it just fits within the narrative. Kind of like, again, I'm going to reference You've Got Mail. I didn't mention this in the video, but it is worth commenting on, is that The Godfather plays an important role in that movie. Just how Tom Hanks thinks and the lines he says, and he references The Godfather by name a few times. As a film nerd, I love moments like that when movies can reference other movies and it doesn't feel forced and contrived, because you've seen movies where they try to reference other movies because they think it's hip or cool, and it's like, oh yeah, see that modern pop culture reference. But the movies that they reference here are not pop culture dated references. These are classic films from film history. Now, The Godfather was still kind of fairly recent by the time You've Got Mail came out. It was only like maybe 30 years old. But Casablanca is just a classic of American cinema. If you haven't seen it, you've got to see it. It's a classic for a reason. The performances are great. And I have a whole video dedicated to that too, so check that out as well. But I can't talk about the writing and the dialogue without mentioning my favorite line in any romantic comedy, and potentially any movie ever. It's a line that's so stupid that it just makes me laugh every time I hear it. And it's when our leads, Harry and Sally, are in this museum and they're just kind of talking and they're having kind of just a fun afternoon together. They're not dating, they're just friends, and I'll talk about that later. But Harry does kind of ask her out on a date and she turns him down, and in a moment of just pure Billy Crystal awkwardness, he turns away, looks at some hieroglyphs, and he says, "Sometimes I wonder if hieroglyphs are just an ancient comic strip about a character named Sphinxy." It's stupid and it doesn't play into the movie at all. It's just this throwaway line, but there's something about the awkwardness of that scenario and that delivery. It just gets me every time, and I had to mention it. But writing aside, if you really want to talk about the plotting and basic structure of this movie, it's really nothing all that special. It's your classic story of these two people that meet each other, they don't like each other, but at the end of the movie, they're gonna fall in love and be together, possibly get married, happily ever after. It's really nothing all that new. You've seen it a million times, but what does kind of make this movie stand out is, for one, just how much they hate each other, and two, just how long it takes for them to reach that end point at the end, because this movie spans years. I'm pretty sure it's over a decade of these two people bumping into each other after years apart, reconnecting. It's all awkward, and then after a while they become friends, and then from there, it progresses. So right away, the sheer amount of time it takes for these two people to come together is noteworthy, because usually with rom-coms like this, they usually meet each other, and then by, I don't know, the next week, or sometimes it's even just over a weekend, they fall in love with each other. But no, this movie's in it for the long haul. It's over a decade before they even kiss each other. And there is one specifically endearing quality that this movie has for me, and it's the old people. The movie has this kind of abstract framing device of old people on a couch in some kind of studio being interviewed about how they first met. So the first scene of this movie is just this old couple on a couch, and they're telling you how they first met and fell in love. And then it cuts to the movie proper, and then we watch that for a little bit, and then every major time jump throughout this movie, you see another couple being interviewed on the same couch. It's just completely different people, completely different story. And by the end of the movie, you've seen about a handful of different couples telling their story, and every time I see it, it just kind of warms my heart a little bit. I guess these old people kind of remind me of my grandparents and how they first met, and I've heard the stories about how my grandparents met a million times, so I can kind of relate to how these old people tell their stories, because really it's the delivery of the story that really sells it too. Is you get a sense of each of these couples' personalities and how they kind of get along, but also kind of get on each other's nerves too, even just sitting on this couch. Sometimes they don't even agree. And while these old people are most likely paid actors, my fan theory, my headcanon, is that the director, Rob Reiner, just found some old people, got them to sign a contract to be in this movie, and had them sit down unrehearsed, tell how you met, and then they were, paid and sent on their way. And while that's probably not true, just watching these movies, you would totally believe it. They're just that convincing. And that authenticity about how married people react, or even just people dating, people who know each other, it permeates this whole movie. This movie is probably one of, if not the most honest and upfront movies about relationships that I've ever seen. Because this movie, primarily through our main characters, but also through the supporting characters like Carrie Fisher. Yeah, Princess Leia's in that movie too, and she's pretty entertaining, actually. You get a real look behind the curtain of how women think and how men think and how they most of the time just don't see things the same way. Men and women are different, what can I say? And as an engaged person myself at the time of this recording, I can definitely relate to that. And what I love about it is that it doesn't pick sides either. It would be so easy probably for Nora Ephron to really explore things from one side or the other. Being a woman herself, I would assume it might be easier to explore the woman's side, but she really does a good job at understanding how men think and how men treat relationships in general and the flaws and imperfections, but also trying to understand why we do the dumb things that we do all the time. And from what I can tell, she does the same thing on the woman's side. You get the good with the bad. It's actually a very balanced movie. There's not really one protagonist and one antagonist. They're just kind of both antagonistic to each other until they end up falling in love. So let's talk about that bit. Because like I said, the first couple times they meet, they can't stand each other. Sally finds Harry abrasive and nihilistic. Harry finds Sally stuck up and a princess. And so they just, they don't really get along, don't expect to see each other ever again. And they kind of part ways. And this happens a couple times. But the problem is they just keep bumping into each other. So then they decide, okay, well, maybe we could just start a friendship, which of course goes counter to Harry's philosophy that men and women fundamentally can't be friends because sex always gets in the way. There's always going to be that tension because sooner or later one's going to want to sleep with the other and it might not be reciprocal and then the friendship is just ruined. But Harry agrees to this because I guess he's open to having his mind changed, and it actually goes well for a long time. They're both seeing other people, but they come together and they just talk and they hang out. And it's quite good for a long time until eventually the sex does get in the way. They sleep together, and that is your third act breakup moment, is after they sleep together. They tell each other that, oh, it was a mistake, shouldn't have happened, but secretly they both really liked it and wanted to bring the relationship to the next level and get together, but neither one's willing to say that. And now I'm really realizing just how many rom-coms borrow from this, and really I don't think it's exclusive. I think this movie really borrowed from a lot of rom-coms that came before it too, so I'm not saying that this started it. But yeah, this movie does have a fair bit of rom-com cliches, but I will say the third act breakup in this movie is kind of unique because in a lot of rom-coms, when they sleep together, that's either a symbol of their first meeting, their first date, and it's going well, or it's the thing that they do at the end of the movie that really solidifies them and they come together and it's a symbol of unity and a happy ending. But throughout this movie, it is the primary source of conflict, and I just think that is also what makes this movie so much more honest and relatable because yeah, in a lot of relationships, sex is a main source of conflict. And especially if you've friend-zoned each other and then just happen to have sex one night, what does that do for the relationship? How can you bounce back? And this movie uses that to its storytelling advantage, and it really explores some of these ideas. And it's not one of those movies where if they finally have sex, then everything's going to be happily ever after. If anything, it's the opposite. They went into that not prepared for the ramifications where they stood in their relationship, and it nearly destroyed all contact with each other, and they almost didn't get that happy ending. But of course, this is a romantic comedy. We need a happy ending. We need them to come together, they kiss. And they do that on, well, not Valentine's Day. I really tried to make this a Valentine's Day episode, but I guess I should have done Sleepless in Seattle instead. That at least takes place on Valentine's Day. But don't worry, I'll probably talk about that next year. That's another movie I really want to talk about on this channel. It's one of my favorites. But on New Year's Eve, Harry comes clean to her, all of his feelings, how much he really does care about her, and how their friendship has only built that over time, and how he doesn't want to throw it away, and how he loves her and wants to spend the rest of his life with her. To which Sally replies, again, very honestly, when you say stuff like that, it makes it impossible for me to hate you. And that's the movie. Well, it's not quite the end of the movie. They kiss, and then we see the last little bit of old people on the couch, and it's Harry and Sally. They're married, they have some kids, they're doing all right for themselves. It only took them over a decade for it to actually happen. And that's When Harry Met Sally. It's one of my favorite rom-coms. This movie is so good. My review probably doesn't do it justice, But definitely go check out this movie. It's hilarious, it's witty, it's surprisingly realistic and authentic to a dating or marriage relationship, depending on what stage of life you're in. You are gonna relate to this movie on some level. But now I turn it over to you guys. What do you think about When Harry Met Sally? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And as always, I'm Colby. This is my nerdy talk, and I'll see you in the next video.